at 42 years old, you don't gain muscle. You know, you went from like being this, big. Now you got arms like a boa constrictor and a head like a basketball. And you know something? People are more cynical, not because it's the players, but you don't see Bud Selig knew that McGuire, pothmarked at 38. He has a complexion like a high school kid. You think this just like happens? No, he went from being relatively muscular, and now he could like rip a wall down. And you don't think Major League Baseball, after the '93 strike, knew, hey, I don't care, we need this. We need the home run.
So there's a traditional, mom and apple pie kind of thing, and we don't have the faith in that institution the same way. And you look at the church, used to have tremendous moral standing in the United States. And the church with the sex scandals and seems to not be in tune with people's day-to-day lives. And actually, you look at the media.
The church in the Western world is in huge trouble. People don't realize. Total membership might be up, but it's more of a third world venture. Like South America and Africa and other places. And I think it's great. And there's nothing wrong with that. But in the West, church membership is way down because, in part, not in total, all these scandals.
Yes, so Americans still are counted as being religious, spiritual, believing in God, spiritual, but they're not signing up for the institution, and they're not.
Well, it's like a quasi-steroid thing. I mean, the leadership, if they took care of it, it's a whole thing like Nixon. If Nixon said, "Okay, people in my cabinet were, they went astray, they're out of here," nothing would have happened. He would have gone down as, I'm sorry to say, one of the better presidents of all time, maybe. Right. But it's when church hierarchy in the upper echelon, transfers a priest somewhere. I even saw, it was on Anderson Cooper about some priest that actually killed a girl, and what happened to him was nothing. The church sent him off knowing that he committed actually murder.
All right. So then in other institutions, the media. I mean, in days gone by, the media, the Walter Cronkites of the world, they were the vanguards, the fourth element of the government.
Yeah, they were the fourth wing of the United States government.
And the media numbers are completely in the crapper. There's bias in the media. They don't really report.
I think media is irrelevant. And I also believe, I really do believe this. I know their ratings are pretty much, absolutely, except for the buzz. Their ratings are a little bit down, or they could be better. I believe CNN is going to rise out of the phoenix and be preeminent again, because I think the other two media wings, Fox, a lot more watchable than MSNBC. It's just red meat. It's just like, you're not going to learn anything.
No, I disagree with you about CNN.
Why is that?
Because I think Fox has an unbelievably good formula, and they're a little bit more conservative. They're right of center, but they are.
But they just preach to the choir. Sean Hannity, all these others.
But it's a big choir that has lots less choices than the other side of the choir. The other side is dividing their viewership amongst ABC, CBS, NBC. Most of the other mainstream media outlets, in my opinion, most conservatives agree, are more liberally biased. So Fox has the market cornered on the conservative viewership.
I respectfully disagree, because I think being conservative, even I don't want to just be fed, marshmallow puffs all day long about, Obama's a right-wing, whack job, and he's a, communist. And I'd rather just be, if I go to the news, I want to be informed. I don't want to have Sean Hannity or Greta, whatever, who I don't understand. I don't get that one at all. I don't know how she got on the, getting on the air is one thing. The OJ trial, that's 20 years old. Come on, please, you're killing me. It's just boring to me.
But setting that aside, when you look at the public polling, though, regardless of who watches what, the media standing, people don't trust the media. They don't think the media is doing a good job. And this cuts across both sides of the aisle, Democrats, Independents, Republicans. It just doesn't have the moral standing, and it's a problem. So when you look at all these institutions across a wide array, it's no wonder that people are a little unsettled. And then it does tie in with Snowden with this NSC leak scandal. Here you have another little needling of the American population. It's already a little down on themselves, is that you have a U.S. citizen leave the country, say he doesn't want to come back because he's not going to get a fair hearing, a fair trial.
I'm sorry, no.
And he's going to hide out in Russia.
He would not get a fair trial because, I'm sorry, you're really, not you, anyone, is very simplistic. Governments are governments. They're in there for their own power base. Believe me, if there was mass riots, well, 1960 there wasn't, you know what happened. But if there was mass uprisings in America, people were dissatisfied with the government, believe me, the United States government would come down as hard as they did in China in the mid or late 80s. The problem is that Snowden, I don't think, is a traitor. I don't know him personally. Obviously, I didn't really research him that well. Kind of know a little bit about him. I think he's just embarrassing the United States government, and I say God bless the guy. I'm sorry to say. Do I agree with everything he's done? But no, he's pointing to things that are fundamentally wrong with the United States government. Spying on our own people, doing all the things that we do, and I think it's just embarrassing our own government because it points out our own incompetency. What do you think?
I'm not sure what I think exactly. I think the larger overlay for me is that you have this person that worked in the government, so you assume at one point he was patriotic. You know, he grew up in America, worked for the NSA, must have had somewhat of a passion for defending U.S. interests to go into that field, and then he thinks the government is doing wrong, and he goes to such grand lengths to leave the country that he's that afraid. Like,
well, but that's one aspect of it, Chris. That to me doesn't bother me that much because you'd have to be a moron to think you're going to get a fair trial. Hello, I think it's more important that he went to the NSA and he actually probably was patriotic, and then finds out all these things, spying on own Americans, databases, metadata on people that are not terrorists, and basically it is a big brother state. And it's an illusion of freedom. I think it's hysterical that, we point to all these other countries that we're going to show them the right way. They're not really democracies. Well, go look at yourself, United States. Oh, I love the United States. But I think we've taken a sidetrack. I don't think there is that many personal freedoms left. I mean, it's better than the Stalinist Russia, obviously. But I think that the United States keeps tabs on almost everything and every American, and I think Snowden pointed out things that the American government did not want people to know, and I have no problem with that at all.
Why couldn't he stay in the country, though?
Because he would have had a double life sentence.
Couldn't he go on, CNN, who you think is going to rise from the ashes? Couldn't he go on CNN and announce this and become a mini celebrity?
I think actually I heard, and I cannot take credit for it, although I'd like to, that his problem was not what he initially did, it's how he handled it after. Going to Russia, doing these things did not serve him well. If he did what you said, going to CNN, which will rise from the ashes, and go on, Wolf Blitzer or whatever, he would have built such a following that the United States government could not have really done him due harm. I believe that's true.
Okay.
And now, speaking more things about the NSA and about our over security apparatus, is even though I'm more conservative than, let's say, more conservative than not, I was a big fan of Hillary Clinton. Until I started hearing more information, I started questioning my own logic that it's almost a cult of personality. When you look at her tenure as Secretary of State, it's among not if the worst tenure of anyone in modern U.S. history, besides maybe the Vietnam era.
Sure. I think it relates to what we talked about. I mean, this dearth of real estate, this dearth of good leadership, that Hillary Clinton is held up as this wonderful Secretary of State, and people throw around the greatest Secretary of State, but there's no evidence of that. It really
no evidence. Go back and
if you look at history, these people are relatively small in stature, what they accomplish, but they need to be pumped up. This elitist kind of leadership.
Well, before we talk about the pumping up, that's something we are going to talk about. Let's look at her tenure.
Yeah.
Okay, she had the America reset, like we were arrogant and now we're going to get in line with everyone. Okay, good or bad, I don't know. Arab Spring, a complete disaster, okay? Libya, no success. Was there a Mideast peace? No. The Mideast is worse than it's ever been. Nothing, and relations with Russia, so-called reset, have never been worse since the Cold War. One accomplishment, Chris, that she's done in her tenure? Bin Laden.
I think I think the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton, they'll often take credit, and probably deservedly so, for taking out Osama bin
Panetta
Laden.
was the one. She sat in the room, took credit for it.
Yes.
And Obama, I give Obama a lot of credit because at least he had the guts to pull the trigger. But I think she sat in the room and watched it. I really believe that her tenure, I think if she remained senator and stayed in the public eye, wrote a book or a couple books, would have been much better off. I think her tenure as Secretary of State is going to hurt her, not help her.
And we've also alienated a lot of our allies. You know, Germany is ticked off at us about this spying. They don't seem to be pleased. You know, Israel, which is one of our best friends in the whole world, we seem to be somewhat at odds with them.
But before you do that, answer the question. Is it going to help her or hurt her tenure as Secretary of State?
It will help her because so much PR has been built around her tenure there and has been built up and gobbled up by the mainstream media and gobbled up by people who love the idea that Hillary Clinton was a great Secretary of State.
In retrospect,
that it'll be successful.
Chris, it shouldn't. I'm right, but you're right. That it will be retargeted, reformulated, that she will come across as the greatest secretary. She'll be Churchill-like when they're done with her.
Yes.
And speaking of that, how weird is it? And troubling, not weird. They're going to have three, the mainstream media.
Yes.
Okay. Three, I mean, you're not talking about Winston Churchill or FDR in their time, I'm talking about, who did these courageous, great things. Even George H. Bush, who led us to the first Gulf War, a real war, not the second one, which is a joke. Okay? Three networks are going to do docudramas on her, and they're going to position it and run it before they have to do equal time. That should be troubling. I'm sorry, I don't care what side of the fence you're on. If that's not troubling, then I don't know what to tell you. I mean, they're basically creating free publicity and airtime for Hillary Clinton. That, to me, is very troubling. When they had a real hero in recent history, George H. Bush, who took a country that lacked confidence militarily and otherwise and led a coalition into the Gulf War. What did they do? They trashed him right after the war because he didn't get his thing. So do you think that's enough to propel her to the ascendancy of presidential leadership?
I mean, that's the odds-on consensus, but I would say no. You know, because she was the heavy favorite going into the last presidential election or open seat, you know, but Barack Obama beat her, and I know people say that it's a fluke and, you know, she was destined to win, but maybe there was a reason why she didn't win. And
you know something, Chris, on that note, I actually 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
Well said, my friend. Barack Obama, they talked about the land game, the ground game, the sky game. He was a weak candidate. He didn't do anything. There's people that ran McDonald's that didn't work. They balanced the, you know, 800 buns and 300 hamburgers. They've done more than him. Weak candidate. Disrailed her, she lost. I think with a track record, she's going to be set up. She's going to get early mind share lead, but once the rubber hits the road, I don't think she's going to make it.
Well, I think if you have to be so pumped up, like this cult of personality that you're talking about, it might be successful, and we talked about that. But the other part of it is, if you really are a great leader, and you don't need that as much. So there's a lot of bark there.
I would agree. A lot of bark, no bite. But speaking of bite, tune in next week because you're going to get another hard-hitting discussion point with Chris and I from the Business Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition. Hope you have a great rest of the night, and tune in next Wednesday at 8 o'clock for another exciting edition of The Buzz. Thanks for tuning in. Chris, thank you.
Thanks.